This day is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can find options that fit your budget and potentially lower your bills. Try it at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states. 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to This Day in Esoteric Political History. My name is Jody Avergan. And we are back here on a Sunday morning with our little Sunday election chats, which are a little more conversational, a little less historical, but, you know, we've got some things to say about this year's race. We are just entering the home stretch, rounding the corner, as they say, for the 2024 election. I know. Those sighs are the sighs we hear all around the country. But thanks to everyone who's been listening to these Sunday episodes. It's been really nice to be able to just kind of weigh in on this year's race. And shout out to everyone who's been watching these on YouTube. That's right. You can go watch these on YouTube and see us discussing this year's race. And us, of course, is Nicole Hemmer of Vanderbilt and Kellie Carter-Jackson of Wellesley. Hello there. Nice to see you.
Hello, Jody.
Hey there.
Kellie.
Yeah.
We're recording this, just a little bit before people are going to actually hear it, early on a Sunday morning. You're all dressed up. What's going on here?
I am. Well, I'm about to go to church. But
priorities, right?
Yeah, priorities. So I've been in Washington, D.C. since Thursday, turning up for Howard's homecoming. It's the 100th anniversary of Howard's homecoming. It's the 20th anniversary of my homecoming. And it has been wild. Y'all, I go to bed at 10, 10:30. Yeah. I've been going to bed at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. And I'm like, hey. I need a nap. I need a nap.
I didn't realize you'd been there since Thursday.
Since the Thursday, clubbing.
You're doing it.
Since Thursday, multiple clubs, the drinks. I'm like, I can't. This is a young girl's game. Okay, this is a young girl's game. But the crazy thing is, now, in this post, pandemic moment, everyone's in the club with sneakers. So there's no there's cute dresses, but everyone's in flats. I'm this is what happens when you come back 20 years later. You're like,
so take care of those arches.
But yeah, we'll turn up, but in sneakers.
And this has got to be, this is the first Howard reunion in which a Howard alum is running for president of the United States. Is that part of
and
the
there were rumors that Kamala might show up. There was all kinds of rumors. And then all kinds of safety protocols. You could only go into campus with those, clear bags.
Mm-hmm.
And they were basically don't bring a purse. Which I was mad because I had a cute handbag. I'm not gonna lie. And then she didn't show up. And then we were but we were kind of listen, you need to be in battleground states. You do not need to be here. We are good.
But are people talking politics, or are they just turning their brains off?
Yes. Well, it's a little bit of both. I think people are so what do you think? What's gonna happen? You good? People are definitely having those conversations. But people are also I can't think about it. I don't want to talk about it. I'm here to have a good time. And I get that sentiment too. So it was a mix of both. But I can tell you this: if Kamala wins, Howard alum will be insufferable. You will not want to be insufferable with us because we will be hey. I mean, it was everywhere you went. It was HU. I mean, we were like a gang.
I mean, it sounds amazing.
Well, we'll do this fast and we'll get you back off to church and to the festivities. But yeah, I mean, look, I'm curious kind of what, Niki, your thoughts are on the sort of events since we last got together and talked about this year's race. I mean, the big thought on my mind is kind of have we reached the point where basically nothing is really going to shift things markedly in one direction or the other? Kind of what is the sort of stop dead point for stuff that really shifts an election? And I have a couple thoughts about things that might, and I certainly think one of the ones that people hope will be a flood of money. And that's actually what we're going to talk about in a few minutes. We have got someone who's kind of been watching Dark Money and super PACs and all that stuff on to talk about the kind of big money that's been around, but I think is also really kind of just going to flood in these last couple of weeks. But Niki, what are the top lines for you, or what's caught your eye since last week?
Well, so a few things. This question about what matters in the home stretch, I do think is a really interesting one, because there's a lot of debate going on right now about This is always the case, but about ground games and the way that the ground game for the Republican Party has been outsourced to groups like Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA and to Elon Musk, who's just kind of out there doing his own thing in parallel. And I know we'll talk a lot about that in a few minutes when we talk about money and politics. I was actually texting you this morning, Jody, to get your take on one of the big stories of the week, which involved Arnold Palmer. But it seems like maybe you have not heard this particular one.
I had no idea what you were talking about, and I started to Google, and then I was like, wait a minute, let me wait, and let me just have Niki tell me the story. But wait, Arnold Palmer's been dead for a bit, no?
This is very much in the late great category and not so much in a thing that Arnold Palmer did recently. But you know Donald Trump is a big golf fanatic.
Incredible golfer, from what I'm told.
Right. And where is golf in your sort of range of sport followings?
It is in the heavy disdain category.
Okay. Well, this might not improve it. Okay. But, you know, Donald Trump talks a lot about golf and about the late greats from when he was growing up, sure. And when he was kind of at the height of his game. And so he was talking about Arnold Palmer. But he did deviate from talking about Palmer's golf game to talking about something else. And I'm just going to read you the quote because it is, you got to read the quote.
Kellie, do you know this story?
I don't, so I'm ready to be surprised.
She was in the club.
I saw like a blip on my like feed, and I just kept scrolling.
Did this happen like last night?
Yeah, it happened on Friday night or Saturday night. Yeah, so we are right here breaking news.
All right, well, tell me what Trump said about Arnold Palmer. All
right, so here's the quote for you. Arnold Palmer was all man. And I say that in all due respect to women, and I love women. This guy is a guy that was all man. This man was strong and tough, and I refuse to say it. But when he took showers with the other pros, they came out of there. They said, "Oh my God, that's unbelievable." I had to say it.
Trump said this at a rally?
What? Wait.
His rallies have gone a little off the rails lately, as people may know. It tends to involve less talking and more swaying. But in this case,
the dancing was like, what?
Yeah. We're getting a different kind of locker room talk as we figure out.
Wait, I'm so confused. I shouldn't be confused at this point. He says this at a rally. What's the response of the audience? I mean, are people like, is he talking about this man's penis on stage? Like,
I think it was probably greeted with cheers in the way that most of what he says is greeted with cheers. But it also, like, there are some resonances with this. We have talked more about dick size in presidential campaigns since 2016 in a way that I was not, as a presidential historian, really prepared for.
No.
It came up in the 2016 Republican primary debates where Donald Trump, responding to comments about his small hands, made clear that that wasn't a problem in other areas. And then Barack Obama made a dick joke at the convention.
The crowd size.
Well, look, first off, the reason I don't know about this story, because I do think it happened Saturday night but on Sunday mornings, listeners should know, like, this is how I get my news. I subscribe to an actual newspaper on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. And what's that joke? This is literally yesterday's news. So that's why the Arnold Palmer thing wasn't in here. I'm assuming it'll be front page tomorrow. And I didn't check social media this morning, which is another big part of my wellness routine.
Bless you.
Listen, I know.
Yeah, I mean, how do you fact check that story?
But wow.
But look, I actually, this sort of relates to the other, and you already hinted at it, but the story kind of on my mind, I think, since we last spoke, is Trump's behavior at these rallies. And, I tend to be a believer that, like, you should watch most of those pitches. Like, Trump says crazy thing, like, whatever, let it slide by. I do, I don't like that phrase baked in, but I do think, like, a lot of it is just kind of a given. I will say that the rally at which Trump basically cut a town hall short and then just said, let's listen to music and sort of sway live on stage, that cut through for me, and I think deserves to cut through for voters. I mean, it was genuinely addled behavior. I mean, it's the only way to describe it, right?
For 40 minutes.
Yeah.
40 minutes. This wasn't like 2-minute intermission. We're waiting for the next speaker, yada, yada, yada. 40 minutes of just...
And so a riff about someone's penis size or a riff about boats and batteries or whatever, like, I kind of actually think, like, that's Trump, who he is. This, I don't know. And Niki, I mean, like, what was your reaction to it? And did it break through in the conservative media that you watch as like Trump did this like genuinely more bizarre than normal thing?
It's a little weird. Yeah.
More than a little. First of all, it is one of those things that I think cut through because it wasn't about being offensive or shocking or breaking the norms. It was just, again, you use the word addled. Like it was something that wasn't moving the ball forward for him politically in any way. It was that he seemed unable to continue the thing that he was in. And, it came alongside reporting from Politico that Donald Trump is exhausted. And so that narrative is coming out there. Obviously, there's been a lot of focus on age and ability over the course of the 2024 campaign. In conservative media circles, it has either been ignored or it has been reinterpreted as liberals are trying to gaslight you. Donald Trump was just helping out when there were two people in the audience who had medical emergencies. And while that was the case, those medical emergencies were wrapped up in minutes. So it doesn't explain the 40-minute set list and dance party.
Yeah. Just awkward.
And meanwhile, on the flip side, I mean, Harris, who I think is generally just kind of going through the paces and doing, I think, like, more media and sort of saying the things she needs to say. She did have one line that I thought was really strong in response to a Trump heckler in the audience. She said, "You're at the wrong rally. I think you want to be at the smaller one down the street." That's a good line. And moreover, moreover shows like a nimbleness of mind.
Yes.
That I think is like worth highlighting in contrast to Donald Trump. So
she knows how to give out those zingers. She knows how to really and this is also something that's very Black, right? Like in Black culture, we call it playing the dozens, where we know how to tease, we know how to like go tit for tat. And so the way that her response was just like, "Oh, no, you're at the wrong rally. You need to be the smaller one down the street." Just like, and everyone in the audience is like, "Oh." So it was a moment.
So look, both of these moments, obviously social media jumps on them and likes to make jokes and, it flies around. And I tend to dismiss that, I think, in terms of kind of that's not the real world. But if we get to this meta question, I think, of the day, which is kind of, have we passed the point where something could shift this race? Does this contrast of, on the addledness spectrum, feel like something that could sink in for voters in these last, 10, 15, whatever, however many days it is?
It could. I mean, one of the things that's been so difficult about recent elections is there has been a kind of both solidity to where voters are. Like these have been the presidential elections have been very, very close. And even if the polls have shown movement, at the end of the day, you've tended to have voters landing about in the middle. But because they're so close, the movement of 60,000 votes makes the difference between winning and losing. Yeah. So it's hard to say because we don't see the kinds of enormous swings that we used to see in presidential elections. That said, undecided voters are kind of tuning in now, and the images that they're being hit with, at least coming out of rallies and campaigns, right? That kind of earned media stuff feels like it's showing a lot more energy for the Harris campaign. But remember that, especially if they're in swing states, these are people who are being flooded constantly with targeted messages from the campaign. And I honestly just don't know which one of those cuts through more.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about what cuts through. And I think one of the things that helps something cut through, or maybe not, is a ton of money. Now, here's something I didn't know. When you drink, your body turns alcohol into a toxic byproduct in your gut. And that is what is really responsible for your rough next day. So if you want to enjoy a night out and still feel good the next morning, check out Pre-Alcohol. ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic Drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic created to help break down that byproduct. The trick is to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night, drink responsibly, and you will feel your best tomorrow. And, I kept hearing about pre-alcohol and wondered what it was really like. And now that I've tried it, I get why everyone is talking about it. With their GMO technology, ZBiotics is continuing to invent probiotics that will help with the everyday challenges of modern living. So go to zbiotics.com/thisday to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use this day at checkout. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they will refund your money, no questions asked. So once again, that's zbiotics.com/thisday and use the code thisday at checkout for 15% off.
We want to tell you about another podcast from PRX called Monumental. This podcast explores questions about the past, present, and future of U.S. monuments, uncovering the stories about what and who is important, as well as the stories that have been left out. Join host Ashley Seaford across the country with their team of journalists. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
So here to help us kind of paint a picture of the money game in the 2024 election, how I think it's very different from even the last cycle and certainly from previous elections like we talked about here on this show, is Dave O'Brien, who is policy director at RepresentUS, which is a group that I've done a bunch of work with and is a kind of nonpartisan, good government, anti-corruption organization. Is that how you describe yourself, Dave?
Yeah. On a good day.
Yeah. And I mean, I will say RepresentUS, what I like about the work you do is both it has a little kind of humor to it, which I really appreciate. And also it tries to really get us to understand the kind of gears of democracy, right? And the way the system works as opposed to just, candidates and policy issues and so forth. But thank you for doing this. Thank you, especially for doing this on a Sunday morning.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm a big fan of the show. So really, this is kind of a treat.
Great. Well, let's paint a big picture here, which is like, I think that maybe we're a generation after Citizens United. People kind of have a basic understanding that there's a lot of what is sometimes called dark money that floods into elections. And I would say even beyond that, people maybe know like the Kochs, the Soroses, maybe they've heard of the Adelsons, right, as the kind of big players. I feel like one of the things that you've done this cycle to highlight, and you're doing this in collaboration with Open Secrets, there's a lot of new players on the scene. And I think that a lot of names that people maybe don't know are kind of having a huge impact. So you want to just kind of paint the picture of like the new vanguard of dark money, such as it is?
Sure. So, one of the stories of 2024, as it has been for pretty much every presidential or even really all election cycles since Citizens United, is just large amounts of money coming into elections. And there have been a lot of the usual suspects hanging out around theirs. Big donors in past cycles are showing up in this cycle too. But we're also starting to see some new faces. Part of this is normal, as the economy changes, you'll get bigger players, new industries and companies. Railroad companies aren't the kingmakers politically that they used to be in American history. But we're getting some new people entering the game. And one of the other big stories is that dark money is still huge, but we are also seeing a lot more coming from a lot less from what we would traditionally call like the dark money sources, and a lot more from, what everyone sort of knows as super PACs. So something that a lot of people don't realize, super PACs are not dark money organizations. They're required to disclose who their donors are. So in one sense, you could look at this and say, well, dark money isn't actually so much a problem anymore. Really what's happening is the funding is going elsewhere to super PACs, which are, in theory, a little bit more transparent. But this gets tricky because while super PACs tell you who they got their money from, that doesn't mean that you know where those people got their money from. So it's become pretty common to have all sorts of shell entities you can give money behind. There's still a lot of dark money just under the surface. And so when we look at like the top 4 or 5 major donors right now, a lot of them are some of the people that we've seen before. So you have Timothy Mellon, who is, the heir to sort of a storied American industrial family. The Mellons, if you go to Pittsburgh, everything is named after them, it seems like. His grandfather was the Secretary of Treasury. James Cromwell played him on Boardwalk Empire, and it doesn't really get more established than Farmer Hoggett playing your grandfather on an HBO premium drama. So he's a big one. Miriam Adelson, who is the the widow of a GOP megadonor, has been giving a lot. Jeff Yass and his wife have who've also been deeply involved in conservative libertarian politics for decades, has been given, and the Ulins, a family who created a Uline Shipping, who are very, very big in both state and national politics, especially in the upper Midwest.
They're the ones who send all those catalogs around, right?
Exactly. Yeah. That's where that catalog money is going.
And they funded the Federalists, right? Is that
they do? I believe they are one of the funders. Yeah.
Wow.
They read Jane Mayer's reporting in Dark Money, and they'll go deep into it. But yeah, so these are really sort of the usual suspects that we'd see. But we're also starting to see some new players spending a lot of money very quickly. So the crypto industry has created their own super PACs, and they're projected to spend at least $120 million this cycle across all races, not just president. They're targeting a lot of congressional races too. They're really being bipartisan in where they're spending their money. They're actually giving to both Democrats and Republicans. And so we are now seeing a new industry sort of trying to become a major player in politics. And in some sense, that seems rational. Crypto's been around for 15-ish years now. And as they've gotten more established and bigger, they're at the place where a lot of industries are, where they look around and they realize, well, we used to be like the cool entrepreneurial outlaws, but we've got a lot of money now. We don't want to pay taxes on it. And maybe we want a more, a friendlier regulatory environment. And we maybe want the government to help us open markets. So of course, we are now going to Washington, and we're going to start, trying to get involved in politics.
Niki, are you seeing the crypto politics nexus sort of emerging in the conservative media that you're watching?
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of focus, especially because people like Elon Musk have become more central to the conservative politics. They bring with them a host of these issues around tech, around crypto. Peter Thiel, other people. These are pet issues that require a ton of support from politicians, because government could legislate crypto out of existence tomorrow. Okay. And so they're like, okay, well, if we want to continue to have this industry, we need to have a lot of power in Washington, D.C. And it's something that Musk is obviously tweeting about a lot, but even on more legacy shows like Glenn Beck is not somebody who's particularly tech savvy, but he is also constantly talking about crypto, talking about Bitcoin, and talking about it in the sense that there's a way that it fits in very neatly with a libertarian conservative ideology, which is, we want to end the Fed. We want to do away with the traditional banking system. They're watering down the dollar. This is going to be our way out, as crypto is going to give us a kind of freedom, and a freedom from oversight and regulation, right? They can't debank you if you're using crypto. And so that has been a big part of the conversation that's taken a more paranoid turn on the right.
I wonder though, who is giving on the left? Because I feel like, when we talk about money, especially with this campaign, it's always been that Kamala has raised more money, that they have a bigger vault, that they have all of this extra resources. And I'm like, okay, well, this can't just be coming from grandma's $5 donation or, the $50 that people give here or there. Where is all of the money on the left coming?
Well, so the left has its share of super PACs and hybrid PACs, which, to make things even more confusing, there's all sorts of different categories of PAC and big spending operations. And they are doing very well this cycle too. So, a lot of it is from small donors, just as it is on the right. I don't want to sort of make it sound like it's all billionaires, but a lot of it is millionaires and billionaires. So just like the conservative movement and the Republican Party have their own sort of, allies among the super wealthy, so does the left. So Mike Bloomberg, for example, has been giving a lot of money. The Perlmutter, Schwartz, the Simons family, the Mandels. There are some sort of familiar big name donors in those spaces. And there are also favored industries for both sides. Most industries are smart and they give a little bit of money to each person, but there are, of course, depending on who you are, you'll have a preference. So oil, natural gas has long favored the Republicans and conservative candidates. Trial lawyers have long favored the Democratic candidates, for example. And a lot of it's that. The same as that. Like I said, crypto is being kind of cautious in a way. And, while a lot of their sort of more high profile advocates are, trending toward the Republican Party. Their super PACs and their donations are being a much more, universal, and they're just sharing to everyone. Another sort of group that is giving a lot of money to both candidates, but also spending a lot in Democratic campaigns is the United Democracy Project, which is sort of a sort of been created by AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs or Public Action Committee or Public Affairs Committee. Too many acronyms. And,
I know. Keep it all together.
I know. And they're have been an influential voice in American politics for a while. That's not unusual. But in, say, the primary campaign season, some of the most expensive House of Representative primaries in history have happened this cycle, and some of it was from target candidates who were targeted by organizations like the United Democracy Project, who were sort of supporting challengers to incumbent candidates. And it certainly happens that incumbents lose primary elections. We all know that's how AOC got her seat. Eric Cantor sort of lost his in an upset years ago, but it's unusual. Generally, if you are an incumbent, you can sort of expect to coast to victory in your primary election. But I guess that's not the case if a lot of money can be turned on to sort of be spent against you.
Yeah.
And
I mean, Cori Bush lost her seat.
Exactly. Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman, and even on the conservative side, there were some fairly long-term incumbents who lost their seats in primary upsets. Sorry.
I'm just curious about timing here and sort of how much is going to flood in the next couple weeks. There's been some reporting in the last couple of weeks about this group, Future Forward, which is supporting Harris and is a kind of ex-Obama campaign operatives who have raised like $700 million, and their philosophy is to kind of wait, and then flood the zone. And, there's also questions about kind of like their strategy, and they have this like supermarket tested approach to ads. And then the Harris campaign is grumbling a little bit and saying like, maybe we should put people on the ground, so there's that question. But like, what is going to be the flood in the next couple weeks? I mean, are we about to see this go to even another level of spending?
Oh, absolutely. So we're already on track to like surpass the 2020 spending levels. The question is just going to be by how much. And it's always been the case that a lot of money gets released right before election day. There's a lot of reasons for that. A lot of them make sense strategically, or a lot of them are just sort of that's the way, because a lot of time, the campaigns open up the rainy day funds because they realize there's not much runway left. But I mean, we're not going to have any idea how much fully gets spent on this election until all the filings happen, after the election itself, and all of the required filings link up. So when I mentioned the top four, big donors, Elon Musk wasn't on there. He's probably 5 or 6 at this point.
Wow.
He is probably going to make it to the top 4, if not.
Good for him.
Correct. Yeah, right.
I know.
We know we
Push
can
onto
do
the
it.
podium.
Yeah.
We're rooting for you.
Once all said and done, we're accounting for like the total spending. There's a very good chance he'll crack that. And we're seeing him in a lot of the news now, but this is actually pretty late in the game. So it's really the case that he's coming very late. And as you mentioned, you want to have a lot of money on hand towards the end of the election, but there's the big question of how useful it is actually going to be. Yeah. A lot of voters have made up their mind. A lot of people have already started voting right now. Early ballot, mail ballots have gone out. A lot of early in-person early voting is going to start soon. And a lot of the things like, for example, Elon's doing, which people say are just sort of like, it's not directly pay or encourage people to register to vote, but to sort of incentivize them to do it. Well, like it's pretty late in the game to do that too, because a lot of states, you're starting to run into the deadlines for registering before the election. So if I were if I were in his position, I would have tried to do this several months ago, not now.
Well, he's not the sharpest
no
strategist.
He's not been a student of U.S. politics.
Yeah. Very few states have same-day registration and things like that.
Yeah, but if I do same-day registration, I'm not going to qualify for that $1 million lottery or whatever that he's.
Right.
Well, I do think that there is, just to bring a little bit of historical perspective into this, the work that's being done now to both expose what's happening in the campaign finance world, but also to try to do something to change it. This is an issue that resonates with most Americans. The Citizens United ruling was terribly unpopular, and people see this as a real weakness in the US political system. And it was the same story in the late 19th and early 20th century where people were looking around and they were like, our politicians are bought and sold. They're not working for us. And something has to change. And so much pressure built up into the system that it did change, right? Like we changed not just the campaign finance system, but the way that senators were elected and the way that people could express their views on legislation and issues like the initiative. And it led to this kind of wholesale change. And it's just, we've been now for almost 15 years in this Citizens United system, and people are so fed up with it. But what it would take to have a real breakthrough. I mean, I think that the work that you and Open Secrets are doing to just even help us see what's happening is really important. But then it's incumbent upon the millions of Americans who are so frustrated with the system to really put some pressure on the system to change. And we're doing it against pretty long odds, especially with the current Supreme Court, which makes everything very difficult.
So, Dave, I want to let you have final word on just that, because I know that's exactly the work that RepresentUS does. You know, just to, I don't know, maybe not push back, but kind of add another layer to what Niki just said. Like, I agree, people are fed up and they're seeing kind of the way the system has sort of rotted from within. That said, you know, I also, when we talk about kind of money and super PACs and donors, like, I remember a time not that long ago when like people tried to hide who their donors were, right? And were a little more secretive or ashamed even about this. And there were even kind of like conversations about coordination between campaigns and donors and all that stuff. And now, you know, we have Trump putting his biggest donor right on stage, you know, and we kind of are very open about it. And your description of it kind of moving out from the shadows and back towards super PACs and people just being willing, unashamed to just have their name kind of affiliated or whatever. So I don't know, how do you square those two? So I believe both those things are true. I believe that Americans are feeling pretty fed up with this, but I also see people being much more brazen and sort of accepting of the fact that there's just all this huge money sloshing around.
Yeah, I think you can partially write that off to just a big disconnect between public opinion and, you know, people and elected officials and the fabulously wealthy. And it could just be that maybe we're going through, you know, a sort of cycle of American history where, you know, sometimes it's considered to be, you know, be kind of sort of crass to like show off your wealth ostentatiously. And sometimes, you know, if you got it, flaunt it. And you really like to spend, and it's considered sort of like a mark of prestige to show up, to throw your money around. So that might be part of it. It could just be that we are just sort of transitioning between periods like that, or it could just be that we're just like this is something that's become polarized like so much else in American life, and you do have a sort of populist type movement of people who are sort of fed up with seeing this, and then you on one side, and then you have a group of people who sort of see it as sort of like an aspirational, you know, hustle grind set kind of thing, where like that's not corrupting American democracy. That is the goal that we want to achieve. Right. I think that's probably the vast minority of most people. Certainly when we talk to people by far are more concerned about the corrupting influence of money in politics. And that's has created, like you said, a lot of genuine interest in changing things, as there have been in other points of American history. I think that we can get there. I would encourage people not to despair. It seems like there is a long road to go. But remember, like, it seems so normal to us now that we just take it. We don't even blink an eye when people talk about however many billions of dollars are spent on campaigns and like things like that. But it was only Citizens United was only 14, 15 years ago. That's not that long. I mean, a decade before that, I don't think anyone would have really seriously thought that, you know, we'd end up where we are now. So things can change pretty quickly. What really matters is having like keeping your eye on the ball and having like a focused and sustained sort of pressure campaign against those who can make the decisions. There are all sorts of things we can do even outside the Supreme Court to sort of equalize things a little bit. But ultimately, we do have to like focus on the Supreme Courts, be it through, you know, changing who's on there, regular attrition, a constitutional amendment. But like it seems like we're in weird and unprecedented times. But that means that we can go into weird and unprecedented times in a good way too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, that's a great final note to end it on. And I will say RepresentUS is doing a lot of this work. And just even near term, you know, in the next couple of weeks, there is work to be done. And I think you guys are pointing people in the right direction and looking at ballot initiatives and other education and also kind of work that people can do to start to shift things in in this year's election. So go check out the Represent Us website. We'll put a link in our show notes and see both their work on kind of money, but also all these other kind of gears of democracy type things that they focus on. But Dave O'Brien, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. And thanks for all your hard work.
Thank you for having me.
Kellie, go to church.
I'll say a prayer for you.
Okay, yeah, not just for me, for all of
For the whole country.
But Kellie, thank you. Kellie, thank you for doing this. And Nicole Hemmer, thanks to you as always. And thanks to everyone else for listening and watching on YouTube. But we will see you with regular episode back on Tuesday. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Radiotopia.